while you're turning me. Every which way but loose, you turn me. Every which way but loose. Inside the fire's burning me.
Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I can't believe this is the first time I've ever watched this film.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Every Which Way But Loose, which came out in 1978, directed by James Fargo. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows Clint Eastwood's character, Philo Badeau. Philo is a truck-driving, bare-knuckle boxing, orangutan-owning, honky-tonk of a man who's fallen in love with a local singer called Lynn, played by Sondra Locke. When Lynn runs out on Philo, he decides to trek across America to win her heart.
So this again was a film that was turned down by pretty much every major Hollywood studio.
Really?
The script floated around a little while, and it was a friend who passed it along to Clint Eastwood and went, "Hey, can you pass this along to Burt Reynolds? This is a script we think he should play the main part." And Clint was like, "Yeah, I'll pass it along. I'll pass it along." But he didn't. He read it himself and he went, "No, I'm doing this now.
Oh my God.
I want to break out from the spaghetti westerns that I'm famous for, and dabble into comedy a little bit." He anticipated that it would broaden his appeal to the masses because they only see him as this gunslinger. And so he wanted to change things up a little bit, do something different. And the records kind of show that this is one of the highest grossing Clint Eastwood movies of all time. And according to statistics, adjusting for inflation, this film is in like the top 300 highest grossing American films ever made. So much so that it even spawned a sequel.
Yeah! I'd never watched this before.
No.
This is the first time for me. Like, I've watched a lot of Clint Eastwood movies, but mainly just this Western stuff because... mainly because nobody ever actually owned a copy of Every Which Way But Loose. You know, they were like, "Hey, you got to watch this movie. It's one of the greatest comedies of all time and has Clint Eastwood in it. You'll love it." You know, and so I'd always heard of it as that movie with the orangutan.
Sure.
You know, I mean, Shaun of the Dead references it so well, you know, with Nick Frost that I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a comedy, you know. And then I sat down to watch it, and that fucking song starts.
The Every Which Way But Loose song.
Like, I used to like that song. Like, hey, it's from the movie, you know, that I still haven't seen yet, but everybody talks about it, you know. And then you hear it so much for this movie that by the end of it, you're just like, it's like that song with Celine Dion from Titanic, you know, where you want to throw yourself off the iceberg at the end. But now you've said that Burt Reynolds was supposed to play it. I totally see that. Yeah. I'm like, this movie would have been perfect for Burt Reynolds at the time that it was released. What, 1978? You know, James Fargo, he'd only just done The Enforcer.
Right.
With Clint Eastwood. And The Enforcer's, you know, pretty damn fucking good.
Yeah.
It's a bit over the top. It's not the best Dirty Harry movie.
But this film, it's coming out kind of after the success of Rocky and like Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah, see now...
And it's kind of like merging those two together.
See, now when you say Clint Eastwood wanting to act, I immediately did think Sylvester Stallone.
Sure.
You know, Sylvester Stallone is an actor who can act and direct and write, you know, and he's had to work really freaking hard. But they immediately just stick him into certain roles, don't they? Same thing can be said for Clint Eastwood. But this movie, I mean, he starts off driving around doing his deliveries.
Yep, he's littering.
Yeah.
You know, he's making these advances on women. He just walks into that office and just gives her a kiss and marches right back on out. He's just like, wow.
Like I think he works there. I imagine he'd work there and he's well known. You know, you get to know that everybody knows Philo. Like, he goes into the local bar and just, you know, the guy hands him a beer because he knows him, and he just starts helping himself to these nuts, and he gets on the wrong side of Big Al.
Right. Well, yeah, you never steal another man's nuts. I love the fact that, you know, he knocks him out, he falls into the jukebox, and the jukebox continues playing Every Which Way But Loose.
Ah, like... Like, the song had stopped, and I was like, oh, that's really well placed. This is the start of the movie. No, it's still the opening credits.
Yeah.
Every which way but lose. You turn me every which way but lose.
And then we just see him drive home, and he meets up with his brother Orville and his mum. Orville's played by Geoffrey Lewis, who, like, he's got that face that I've seen like 100 times, but I can never place him. Other than, and I did have to research this to remember, Double Impact.
Yes,
with
yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, yeah, that's Uncle Frank. You know, I recognize him. And then you've got Ma, played by Ruth Gordon. And we have this whole side story now of Ma going off to get her driver's license.
Yeah. that is, I mean, in reference to like the title of this film, it is just like a series of unfortunate events or scenarios that they're not really very well connected. You know, it's just random event after random event. It's like, you know, sketch comedy. Yeah, in that regard.
But like I said, for the first time for me watching it, when I finished watching this, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I have so many what the fuck moments. I'm like, who thought this up? But then through talking to you before we started filming, you know, people see this as, what, blue collar America. Yeah. This happens all the time. You know, old ladies go to driving, you know, test places and realize they look too old, or they haven't got their glasses, and they get on the wrong side of their sons, who are, like, how old are Orville and Philo?
40s,
50s, and they're still living at home with mum. You never know anything about their dad. Like, they live basically, I mean, their home is like a junkyard. It's just cars that they're fixing up. I mean, Orville runs a car repair company. And he's got an orangutan called Clyde.
Yeah. I was, you know, a bit confused at first. I didn't like some of the camera tricks that they use in the film. Like, when he comes back from the bar and he goes into the shed. Yeah. And the camera just kind of zooms up and it starts falling all over the place.
Well, it's supposed to be the perspective of the orangutan and him fighting, isn't it? And then...
But then he gets thrown out, and then you see Clyde just come out afterwards. And you're like, oh, okay, that was what was going on.
Yeah. So this point in the movie, I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, okay, here's Clyde. I've heard that this is the movie with the monkey. It seems pretty funny. Clint Eastwood's falling all over the place. And Orville sets up the fight between Philo and Beer Spitter, I call him, because... None of the guys he fights really have any names. They just do stuff, and I was just like, yeah, Street Fighter. You know, he spits out beer. And it's a pretty good fight, but obviously you know that Philo's going to beat the crap out of him.
Well, yeah, I don't think Philo receives a single punch in the entire fight. It's a really one-sided fight. I'm just like, well, it's Clint Eastwood, really.
Like, he was going to win this. And then they head off to the bar. And I like country and western music, but they overused it in this film.
Well, that's the setting for this film. That is like its theme.
I know, but there was just so much, and it's not like background songs. These are like, you know, it's not just in the background while you hear the dialogue. This is full-on songs being played to you to fill out 3 minutes of a scene. Yeah. You know, while Orville and Philo are sat at the bar chilling, and they're looking at these two girls. They're like, we're gonna go over and chat them up. And so when one of them gets up to go, Philo sits down next to this lady, and I mean he's not, you know, it's not like Philo is actually being nice and romantic. He's very dickish.
Yeah, he's very aggressive in his pursuit, and of course she shows no interest in him. And so when she's, I think when she leaves or when she's not aware,
when she turns to get a lighter because she smokes.
She's gone for a smoke. He drops some dentures into her meal.
Yeah, like So I'm supposed to be rooting for this character who's dropped these dentures into this woman's meal, ruined it for her, and now forced her out of this bar.
What happened? This wild clam got out of control.
Because she wasn't interested in him.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. 1970s, okay.
Yeah. Well, we're introduced at this point to Sondra Locke playing Lynn Halsey Taylor. You know, and once again, like I said, this is when the music started to really get to me, because we've already had Every Which Way But Loose played a lot. You know, we've had the guy already play before Sondra Locke's taken to the stage, and now we hear her song, and she's a really great singer. If it's her, but it's a really long song anyway, and Clint Eastwood's like fully enraptured by her.
He's mesmerized.
Yeah. Now, like, I know we kind of talked about their relationship in The Outlaw Josie Wales. And
they did 6 movies together.
They had a very, up and down relationship over the years. And learning so much about Clint Eastwood's past as well. And, what he did while he was in marriages. I was like, wow, you've really now made me see you in a different light. Where in this movie, I'm looking at him, I'm like you said, he stole the script from Burt Reynolds. And then immediately got his girlfriend into it, because, hey, let's work together and we can be together, I suppose.
Kind of smoky in here. Would you like to?
I'd love to.
But their whole relationship is just so cheesy and goofy.
Yeah.
And that's when, at this point, I'm like, this movie is so cheesy and goofy. I've got to get behind it, but there's a seriousness to it, which I don't know if was it just me? It was there, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Well, I mean, he picks her up almost immediately. They get into his truck. He drives her back, and he's just like, "Hey, do you want some company tonight?" And she's like, "Yeah, of course, if you don't mind my boyfriend being in there." And you're just like, "Oh, okay, awkward."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, yeah, no, I don't think so." And he drops her off. But they end up dating like the next night anyway.
Yeah, like he. Well, this is the start of the relationship, isn't it? And she's probably playing at this bar, and they go again, and it builds up the whole aspect of, she needs money.
Yeah, and that's the only reason why she's staying with her current boyfriend, because he owes her like $500 or something. Because she needs it as an investment for a company that she wants to start in a different state.
Yeah,
she's just like, oh, okay. And so then we end up with Philo back in his truck with Clyde, and they get harassed by some bikers. And you get it's a pretty fun moment when you see Clyde just giving them the finger. You're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But then there's like the whole chase scene where he's chasing after the bikers in his truck.
Like he goes he's trying to get away from the action star. He couldn't have ruined it any worse. Like, they throw the cigar at him, and as they ride off, he just bombs down the road after him. There's like a whole train chase sequence. He runs the bikes off the ground. I did laugh when he's running after the train and tripped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't really see Clint Eastwood trip that much. That was really well done. But this is the first encounter he has with the bikers, and you're thinking, okay, so now he's got like a serious threat. He's got the girl to chase after. He's got the bikers that he's
the Black Widows, I think they're called.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when he takes Lynn and Orville out for dinner, and they come into the restaurant, 2 members of the biker gang, and they walk over and they're like, "Do you know what that is?" And Orville just looks at his and just sneezes all over the guy's tattoo, and I'm like, whoa, social distancing.
Well, yeah, and then there's like another bar fight that breaks out. And it's that moment.
He takes him outside, doesn't he? And the camera just stays on Lynn, and Lynn's like, "Are you not going out there to help him?" And you can just see the shadows.
Yeah,
of him just beating
we've
him
already
up.
seen Clint beat up so many people. Now we just don't even need to see it. We just hear it in the background,
That's
and we know
it.
he's won.
I thought it was funny, but then at the same time, I'm like, okay, like the film's like 2 hours long, and this is only within like the first hour that they're setting up, Clint's relationship with Lynn, and there's this whole backstory as well about Clyde. Clyde shouldn't be at the house, Clint Eastwood character had won Clyde in a fight, which it was a really heartfelt moment. I mean, Clint really sells it to me of him coming across Clyde. And having Clyde at the house, Clyde just runs rampant. He's treated like a human being, but also treated like a pet. And he poops and craps everywhere. He kisses the mum at that one point.
He steals Ma's Oreos.
Does her washing as well, hangs the washing up. And so it's really ludicrous, everything that's been building up within this first hour, And like even the stuff with the bikers, they're not a threat
No.
at all.
They are like cartoon caricatures.
Yeah.
Well, it appears to me that there can't be too many guys driving around this valley with an ape.
But then there's another bar fight that breaks out. And you have the moment where he looks over to the bartender and he's like,
"Oh God,
call the cops!"
Yeah.
And he's like, "They are the cops.
They are the cops."
You just have Clint Eastwood just looking like, huh?
Through your town, now it's back.
Somebody call a cop. They are the cops.
Can't see your blue skies.
Well, this is after Lynn has run out on Philo.
Yes.
You know, he's taken all of the bikes that he's taken from the Black Widows and he's sold them, made the money that she needs for her for her business, and has handed it to her, even though she's tried to play it off like, oh no, I shouldn't have it. And then he's gone round to meet her because he thinks the relationship's flourishing, and she's buggered off.
Yeah. She left him a note at the bar just saying, "See ya."
Yeah, so yeah. And that's when obviously he fights the cops. And I'm like, right, okay, so now you've got cops, you've got bikers, you've got him chasing this girl, and there's bound to be some kind of threat. And it's like, no. Because the film has horrible, I don't know if I'm using it right, but just horrible editing. You know, where they jump from one sequence to another sequence to something else, which none of, like, they're so jarring. And
It's disjointed,
yeah,
is what I would say,
that I
yeah.
was like, what's going on? Like at one point, they're getting ready to leave. You know, Orville, Philo, and Clyde, and they've got the truck, and they're saying to Ma, like, yeah, we're gonna go. We're
Heading east.
heading east to see if we can find this girl that Philo's in love with. And I'm sat there like, no, she just took $7,000 from you. You know, she is a beep. And then it just immediately cuts to these two cops who haven't even been properly introduced, just walking on the beach with metal detectors.
Yeah.
And they're looking, and I'm like, what's going on? What the fuck? And then they stop and they start digging. Well, one of them starts digging, the other guy just sits there drinking beer. But he's the guy who's come up with the idea of finding this guy and
getting some payback.
yeah,
They turn up at his house eventually, and Ma is sat on the porch.
they're full on dressed in uniforms, aren't they? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, what would you have done if Philo had been home? Like, would you have just shot him in the doorway and just been like, maniac cop, pow?
But yeah, she gets rid of them, and then the bikers turn up at the porch.
Hey, Granny, how they hanging?
And Ma's had enough of this shit. And so she pulls out a massive gun.
They rip off that piece of her porch, don't they? You
Yeah.
know, and I'm like, criminal damage, come on. Why aren't you calling the cops? Why aren't the cops dealing with
The cops
this?
have already been there.
And she pulls, like you said, she pulls out that fucking effing great big shotgun. And the woman playing Ma is just such
She's
a tiny
great.
lady.
She's
that
great.
when the kickback happens, I'm like, those are explosive rounds.
Right.
You know, those aren't normal pelt shots. She's looking to kill. But like we said, the bikers had that restaurant sequence as well, where they turn up at this restaurant looking for Philo. There's a really, really nice waitress there.
Oh.
In blonde hair. She was probably the best thing about this whole sequence. But they get there and they start, you know, bad mouthing some of the patrons, and they end up outside having a fight. And the bikers get their asses whooped without Philo being there.
Right.
I'm like,
Well, they all just got demolished by an old lady. It's just like, how threatening is this biker gang? It's like, not even slightly.
not even slightly. You know, not even the cops are even slightly. But the whole time, like I said, it's so jarring. We're jumping back from the cops to Philo and Orville. They come across Beverly D'Angelo, Echo, at a fruit stand on the side of the road.
Yeah.
The cantaloupe scene, you know, she holds up those things, and I'm like, okay. You know.
Yeah, and she's being harassed by this lady who's really upset with her. And so Orville just says something to her ear, which makes her run off screaming.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hey, I really like you. Want to come on a road trip with me? She's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, I'll just get in the van with two strange men that I've just met, you know, and they get in. And I do, it is quite funny that Clint gets into the van and just looks at the two of them and doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then just bangs on the window and Clyde hands him a
brings him a
beer.
beer.
And he just starts drinking. And then she looks at him like, you're really going to drink and drive? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this leads me to another sequence, which I just could not believe. I was like, what the fuck? And, like I said, we're following Philo, Orville, Echo now, and Clyde driving across America looking for Lynn. And they stop at this restaurant, they have some food. And we've had shots of Lynn actually doing the same trick to other people at different bars that she'd done to Philo.
She's a scam artist.
She's a mass scam artist. Even, like, we've partially seen the boyfriend, other than the fact that it's a shotgun pointing out the window trying to scare people. So I'm like, she really knows what she's doing. She's a bitch. I don't like her. Why are we chasing after this character? And, you know, where's this all leading to? But Philo and the gang are having food at a restaurant, and Philo says, look, you guys head back to the motel. Me and Clyde are going to go out drinking. So Orville's like, all right, cool, I'm going to shag Echo. And Echo's like, cool. You know, because we've really built up the relationship that those two characters have had, that we're actually really caring about some kind of love. And now we get, what, a 5-10 minute sequence of just montage of Clyde and Clint drinking at different strip joints and bars. And I'm thinking animal cruelty, you know, like Peter going to be on the call at some point. And then he just Philo stumbles right back into the motel and just goes, guys, you gotta wake up. I've been drinking all night and I've just come up with the greatest idea. What's that, Philo? We should break Clyde into a zoo.
We gotta get Clyde laid. And they're just like, what? they get into the truck and they just fall asleep in the passenger side.
Philo's just driving like, yeah, man, I'm looking for a zoo in whatever town we're in. Don't know. Woo, yeah. And he stops at the walls of the zoo, and Echo's like, what do you want us to do? And he's like,
nothing. Stay guard.
There's bound to be security guards around here somewhere. And I'm like, well, it's 1978. This is why we can't have anything nice, Clint. Right. That's why I can't break into a zoo nowadays. It's because you did this on camera. And he just gets Clyde over the wall into the enclosure, lowers him down. There's like a thumb up. Yeah. You know? And he just closes the door and has sex.
Go Clyde.
Go Clyde. Like everything in the movie, nobody had ever talked to me about the moment that Philo got so drunk he broke Clyde into a zoo. You know, fuck the whole Lynn and Philo story. That's not going anywhere. Echo and Orville are having more fun than anybody else, you know, but Clyde's now got laid and you're like, great.
Yeah.
So they've stopped at another stop point and Philo has decided to go for a jog.
Right. Yeah.
And as he's going along, lo and behold, the planets align and Lynn is driving down the same road.
Right, he's like, really? Oh well, it's one of those movies. It looks like she has that panicked look, like, this guy?
Like, I should keep driving, right? Like, this guy's chasing me. Like, I can't believe he's here. No, I'm gonna stop.
Let him in.
And he comes up to the window. Philo's like, hey, Lynn, how you doing? Where have you been with my $7,000 that I gave you? Like, we've come a really long way to find you. And she's like, get in. And they shag.
Yeah. Oh, okay, then, I guess.
Like, what's more awkward than any sequence I can think of? Imagining Clint Eastwood and Sondra Locke doing it on screen. Because, like, this is not a kid's film.
Well, it's a PG movie.
But this should not be in the film if it's a PG movie.
Well, there's no nudity. So, it's...
There's imagination. You don't need nudity when you've got imagination. But on top of that, what the fuck? She's supposed to be chasing, getting away from him.
Yeah.
He's chasing her. And the first thing they do as soon as they meet after all this time is fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, right, we're going with that. Okay. And so he drives back to the rest stop, the rest area. and says to Lynn, like, why don't you come down and meet the family? It'd be so great that they could actually see that you exist because they think I'm mad. And she's like, no, tomorrow we'll meet at a restaurant. And I'm like, no. She's scamming you.
Disappear again.
Like, totally scamming you. And he's like, yeah, okay. See you later, Lynn. And she drives off and he's oh so happy. And the family's like, you know, Echo and Clyde, they're all like, woohoo, we're going to finally meet her. Let's go fishing. Okay, and Orville heads to the local fishing shop, which, lo and behold, the two cops that have been chasing Philo this whole time have gone to. You know, they're using their holiday time to hunt Philo down to get some payback. So when they finally get to him, they're toting shotguns.
I'm like, that's not payback.
That's not payback.
That's murder. Jeez.
Like, and Philo's just stood in the water, you know, Orville and Echo have gone off, and Philo is just there fishing, and the guy's sneaking up on him, and I'm thinking, where's this going?
Right.
Like, Philo's going to beat the shit out of you, and you're cops and not going to do anything about it, because that's the universe we're living in here. But even if you shot him in the back, you know, that kills him. That's just murder. Like, but the whole fish sequence comes along where he's about to catch this really awesome salmon, and he hands the fishing rod.
The cop's just like, oh, let me take it. You don't know what you're doing. He reels it in. Clint grabs it and then slaps him across the face with it.
Oh, God. I thought that was silly, but when he leapt out of the tree like Tarzan, that was it. The movie lost me.
Yeah. Been spending too much time with Clyde.
like he just stood there with his arms out going, Rrr! I'm like, oh my God, Clint, like, I've seen you do a lot of shit, and now I've seen you do that.
Yeah, you've seen everything now.
I've seen everything now.
But the biker gang manages to catch up with Lynn.
Oh God, yeah.
And they pretty much spring a trap for Philo.
Yeah, well, they're in on it with Lynn. Lynn sets them up as well.
Yes, right. So when he comes into the town to meet up with her, she goes driving right past.
Yeah.
And that's when the head of the biker gang calls to him, and then it's like pretty much the final build-up of the scene where he ends up in a fist fight with most of the biker gang kind of pinned into a corner. But that's when Orville, he's in the truck, or he hijacks the other truck,
the rubber truck,
and he starts picking up all the motorcycles. I'm just like, oh, those glorious motorcycles getting trashed in the back.
See, now, these fight sequences had been springing up all the way through the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And there had been an underlying thing about Tank Murdoch, some unbeaten boxer somewhere that, you know, everyone sees as coming up inside Philo. And, you know, the only good fight sequence I actually found was the one in the meatpacking plant.
Yeah.
Every other one just seemed silly and goofy and cheesy.
They were really one-sided fights.
They were, yeah.
Clint Eastwood just thrashed everybody. It was almost a flawless victory every time.
Yeah, but at least in the meatpacking plant, like, Echo saves him and Orville. So it's like, oh, luckily we picked up Echo. And she kind of does the same thing with this last fight sequence. You know, he beats everybody up other than the leader. The leader doesn't get involved at once.
No.
You know, and when he notices all the bikes are getting trashed, they all run after Orville, and he runs and jumps in the van with Echo.
Yeah.
And then they pick up.
The leader of the gang gets his comeuppance because he kind of gets knocked over into the mud puddle, and every time he gets up, he gets knocked right back down into the mud. Again. And again.
And again. And I was like, okay. Like, but we knew that they were inept. We knew that there was no serious threat there. Like, the cops have been taken care of, you know, the bikers have been taken care of, and so now Philo ends up at the local honky-tonk bar, and lo and behold, Lynn is on stage, and he's still kind of in love with her, because he watches her walk off stage, and then when she's outside talking to this other band member who she's trying to fleece for more money, you know, he confronts her, and he's just like, I wanted to change you. I wanted to make you a better person. I was in love with you. And I'm like, man, are you dumb? Like, seriously, this is where this film has got to now, that I'm supposed to feel like Philo, like, you know, has a heart, and that he's a nice guy really deep down, and that Lynn's the villain throughout the whole movie. Because I knew this like an hour ago, you know, and we're still 20, 25 minutes to go, because she does have a good breakdown. I did like that from Sondra Locke. Like, if they ever had a real life argument, I can imagine this is how it went.
Sure, yeah, it's uncomfortable when you know the history between the two, when you see this sequence.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he just stands there and takes it. I mean, I know he's in shock about the revelation that's just happened to him.
Well, Skylar's there, isn't he? And Skylar's a nobody. Skylar's just a guy. But, you know, I kind of understand that, because, you know, it took me back to Casino, you know, Sharon Stone's character in Casino. She's doing all the money for this guy who she's kind of in love with. So I see that in Lynn's character as well.
Sure.
And Skylar's just stood there like, hey man, don't hurt me. You know? And Clint's like, no, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to let her do her thing, and then I'm going to walk off. And I got as well that, you know, he's also seen that, because we get to the last fight, it's him versus Tank Murdoch.
Right.
You know, and he had been set walking into the fight to beat Tank Murdoch and become the new Tank Murdoch. But then as the fight goes on, as he notices the respect people lose, you know, for Tank as he starts to get beaten, like, Philo kind of, you know, reveals to me at this point that, you know what, I should just give up the chase.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like chasing Lynn. There's no point to this. It's an empty dream, you know, it's an empty promise. And so he lets his guard down.
Yeah.
Boy, we're going to make money on this guy.
And then just gets taken out by Tank. And everybody celebrates with Tank. And you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get that. And he gets in his van and sees the bikers with their destroyed bikes.
And they're just totally defeated.
Yeah.
Just driving back home.
Sees the cops with their truck that's been filled with water, you know. And it ends with every which way but loose again.
Of course. Everyone's just driving back home. Everybody's defeated.
Are they? I mean, Lynn kind of won.
I guess, yeah. But I mean, she still had to emotionally confront her wrongdoings.
Yeah, I suppose.
Every which way but loose.
Well, and it does carry over into a sequel as well, where most of the cast all returned.
Right.
And the story continues.
What? Him going after Lynn?
No, Lynn's coming back after him, and he's like, no, I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. Get away from me. But she wants him.
Is it played by Sondra Locke?
Yes, yeah.
It's
all the same cast.
Might have to see it.
Well, Ian, do you have any favourite scenes from Every Which Way But Loose?
I do, but a lot of them are like, what the fuck? Like the whole, you know, chase sequence, like with the bikers, you know, like they have that sequence with the train, you know, that's really over the top, you know, like I understand he's going to chase them down and take them out, but like it goes past comedy for me. It actually goes into like, this is a bit over the top. Them dropping off their bikes, running, jumping onto the train, and then him chase, and then even Clyde driving the fucking...
Yeah, you got to have the obligatory fruit stand demolition.
Yeah, like what? And he doesn't even pay for that. He destroys half of it, and they just get in the truck and drive off. The story of how Philo won Clyde, I really like that. I mean, I can't take it away from Clint Eastwood. He's a really good actor.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and this part with Sondra Locke in the truck, him explaining how he found the orangutan, and he bet everything he owned because he hated the way they were treating him, you know, and now he kind of feels like he should let him free, but, you know, it's part of the family. I'm like, yeah, I can get behind that. The sneezing on the tattoo, and then taking them outside to have a talk. Like, that was funny because, like, we don't need to see Clint Eastwood fight. We know we've seen it 3 or 4 times already. So now actually seeing just shadows and these guys just getting their asses handed to them. Yeah. The bar fight with the cops, You know, like, those cops really got their asses whooped. And then every sequence after with them was like, what? Like I'm watching them digging on the beach, you know? Well, the black officer digging on the beach, and the white officer just kind of sat there like, hey, man, yeah, I'm going to wait for my holiday to come up, and then I'm just going to go and hunt him down. The other guy's like, yeah. Yeah, like, what was the plan? Murder? Because when they finally catch up to him, shotguns? And the whole sequence, yeah, I'm not even going there with that one. Breaking into the zoo, like I said, they went out drinking, and he was massively drunk and just gets into a truck with his family. Like, he could have killed everybody on the way to the zoo.
Oh, yeah.
But he doesn't, and then he just breaks his buddy into the zoo to get laid. The meatpacking plant fight as well. It was just really well filmed. I mean, I don't know if it harkens back to Rocky for me. You know, just the way all the people were there with their money, the way the meat's set up. Especially as well, like I did like the cantaloupe sequence with Beverly D'Angelo. Like, she is Mama Griswold.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, you lucky Chuck. And the fact that she's there to save them at the end, I thought that was a really cool twist. You know, he's beaten the guy who almost beat him. Orville's got the money, and they're almost going to knock it out. Bang, bang, the second shots, just so you don't think the first was a miss. I'm like, oh, yeah. The cops talking about radio frequencies.
Oh, like the code numbers.
I like
this is the 504, we got a 208 on the 739. Like, a what now?
Is that like your 306? No, that's not like my 603 with the 702, but, you know. And it's really well written, I suppose, and then really well delivered, but I'm sat there like...
It's like pre-Police Academy kind of joke humor right there.
Yeah.
Like, I would have personally just deleted it or edited out all the cop stuff, but that one scene was actually quite funny.
Yeah.
Okay, when's the last time you've been out on a 309?
Maybe 3 or 4 months. But it don't mean that I don't know that our 309 ain't more than that damn 602.
Okay, what time you got?
607.
And then I suppose the ending kind of is big favorite sequence. Like, I like the whole... I do like it when he finally catches up with Lynn and she basically blurts in his face like, leave me the fuck alone. I don't like you. I hate you. Get away from me. And he's like, you don't like me? Oh, I wish I'd noticed the signs. You know, like you leaving and going across America with half my savings. And then the fight sequence with Tank Murdoch. You know, Tank's on his last legs and Philo, you know, sees it and thinks, that's where I'm going? No, I don't want it.
Yeah. That's quite a few favourite scenes you got there.
I know, they're all what the fuck. I'm like...
I really enjoyed the opening to this movie. I really liked the song when it came on. Watch, like, Clint Eastwood, mid-70s, was just the definition of cool. Like, you wanted to be him, you know? He was just the man about town, littering, drink driving, flirting with women, going to bars, winning fights, you know? And the song coming on, like him knocking the guy out and the jukebox continuing to play the song. I was just like, this is pretty slick. Like, but, you know, it kind of set me up like this was a partial comedy, partial drama. Tonally the film was confusing. Like you said, it was a bit disjointed. Yeah. But I thought the opening was great. I love Ma. Ma on the porch with her shotgun, blasting the bikes and just the explosions and the bikers just running around like cartoons. I was like, that was the most memorable moment.
Like, she gets a boyfriend at the end as well, doesn't she? You know?
But I guess really, you know, Clyde steals the show at the end of the day. I think it was Manny, the orangutan, was just fantastic. And so I love the moment where Clint imitates the gun to him and he puts his arms up and he goes bang and he just boom straight down.
Yeah, I love that.
Just watching him drinking, hugging, kissing, just he was fantastic on screen. It was mesmerizing to watch.
'Cause when we get behind those doors.
So Iain, do you recommend?
I I'm really on the fence about this one, because when I sat down, I was like, nope, nobody should ever watch this film. It's fucking stupid. You know, Clint Eastwood's at his lowest point. The stories lead nowhere. The editing is jarring. You know, the music is horrible. The dialogue is just not anything you want to listen to, and it's just sequence after sequence of 2 hours of stupidity. But then again, in fairness, that might be what you're after. You know, like Ari and I just sat here and just listed off a bunch of scenes that we were like, what the fuck? And it made us laugh, you know, and it leads to some good acting from Sondra Locke and Clint Eastwood and a whole host of other people who you may recognize from other stuff that Clint Eastwood's done with them. So they've all got real expertise behind them. And, you know, it's, I suppose, you know, a Sunday afternoon, you might find a spot for it.
Sure, yeah. You know, I don't fully recommend this film, although I admit I enjoyed a fair few scenes, and Clint and Clyde were fantastic on screen together. As a whole, it felt disjointed and uneven, and I felt that the humour was kind of lacking at certain parts, and in other parts it was either too campy or too goofy. The performances were great across the board, and I loved Ruth Gordon as Ma. She stole all of her scenes with Clint. The cinematography as well, though, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You know, the fight scenes were well filmed, but occasionally you kind of got the point of view shaky cam, and it just felt sloppy and very rushed. The road trip feel of the film helped drive the story through the series of misadventures, which didn't really build to anything, and then it kind of just ends.
Yeah.
It's not a bad film by any means, and that doesn't, you know, it doesn't take itself seriously, and it makes for easy watching, which would certainly cheer you up like on a rainy day. And if you enjoyed this, then you can easily follow it up with Any Which Way You Can, which came out in 1980. Watch it for some good fist fights, watch it for Manny the orangutan, you know, and some country and western music, and the light-hearted comedy.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Why sleep at all? Just to rest my head on a lonely bed and to dream alone.
Bang.